if you go back to
There we are.
go back to there, it shows you it's live up in the top corner.
Right. Okay, so it looks like we are live now.
You are live now.
We're live now, so good morning again, everyone, and welcome to People and Culture meeting today. It feels like it's been a while, but it hasn't really, has it? We had quite a busy time recruiting and everything else, and then a little bit of a gap, so welcome. We just have 3 apologies, which are Councillors Jacobs, Hopkinson and Tucker. Is that correct? Because we have Councillor Johnson and Myers joining us, which is great. Evacuation procedures will be per your own residence, and people in the office, you will know your own procedures. Do we have any declarations of interest? Item number 3. No. Okay, I've got a long waffly spiel to go through now about YouTube and Zoom, so bear with me, but I suppose I have to do it. The meeting will be video recorded and live streamed onto our YouTube channel, so you can catch up with it at your own convenience later and see how you did. By remaining on the Zoom call, attendees are agreeing for their images and voice to be recorded and posted. And I'm just going to go through the Zoom guidelines. In view of the current restrictions that COVID-19 has placed on everybody, including the Fire Authority, this meeting of People and Culture Committee will take place using Zoom this morning. To ensure the meeting goes as smoothly as possible, there are several points and guidelines that I would like to run through with members and for the benefit of any members of the public that are watching the live stream this morning. So once the meeting begins, attendees will be placed onto mute unless invited to speak by myself, the chair of the meeting. If members wish to speak or have a question, please indicate this by sending a message using the chat function. This will be monitored, and at the end of each item, there will be an opportunity for members to speak in turn. The open section of the Fire Authority meeting will be video recorded and live streamed onto the Avon Fire Authority, Avon Fire and Rescue Service YouTube channel. By attending a meeting via Zoom, attendees are agreeing to their images and voice recording to be posted, as I've already said. Due to the reduction in the length of meetings, it is intended that for reports provided for information or noting, a full discussion will not take place. Please keep any mobile phones on mute to avoid interruptions and interference with sound. Public access statements will not be able to be presented at the meeting by the author, but will be received by members and published along with the minutes of the meeting. There is a time limit of 30 minutes for public access, but there are no public access statements received for this meeting. So that is the things I had to say. Not much else on Chair's business really, but just a very quick check-in about with how everyone is doing, because you know we're all finding our way through this period. It is challenging. This again is my 3rd Zoom meeting of the day, and some people are becoming a bit overwhelmed. So I don't know, can we have a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or somewhere in the middle? A temperature check on how we're doing. Great, a lot of thumbs up. Well, I'll go the opposite way and do it in the middle somewhere. Good, okay, great. So let's move on to agenda item 5, which is agreeing the minutes. Hopefully everyone has had a chance, if your technology has allowed you to go through the minutes. Does anybody need a couple of minutes to have a look through? Or are we okay to agree them? Yeah, so can I get someone to second that they agree with the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Bromley. Right, so agenda item 6, we do not have any public access statements today. So we move on to agenda item 7, which is the DICE strategy and culture change update, with Simon and Richard to present.
Good morning, everybody. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Richard Stokes, the Culture and Inclusion Manager, Avon Fire and Rescue Service. I'll give you a very brief update on our activities with our DICE and strategy. So in terms of our DICE strategy, we are continuously working with departments and continuously reviewing and updating the DICE strategy to make sure that the purpose of the strategy is fully understood by everybody in the organization, in particular the managers that will be using it mostly. Once we've completed our first wave of our DICE training, which we are currently running at the moment for middle managers, the DICE team plan to consult with all the managers on the strategy and ensure that we're providing the right support that they may need in terms of delivering the objectives within the document. Additionally, we are consulting with SARI, who we have a service level agreement with, and we're using those consultation periods to go over the DICE strategy, ensure, especially concerning the communities, that we are doing what we can to support and create initiatives that will help deliver our services effectively within our communities. In terms of sharing best practice with our partners, we are increasing the number of community contacts that we have. We have some core organisations that we work regularly with, from Bristol City Council, NHS, and again, SARI. And this is very useful for us in terms of sharing best practice, in terms of equality and diversity initiatives. We're also working with other partners in terms of recruitment, virtual job fairs, also including mentoring circles and youth hubs, where we try to support young people, especially in terms of coping with the impact of COVID-19 and helping them to sort of gain confidence in terms of finding careers, jobs, and suitable employers. So that work will continue into the future. I mentioned community engagement and raising cultural awareness. We're working closely with our corporate communications team to develop a diversity calendar, which we hope to incorporate into Outlook, everyone's Outlook calendars. And the purpose of this is to highlight events and special celebratory events, especially festivals, that we can participate in and create activities around. October, as you all know, is Black History Month, and internally we are working with Corporate Comms again, and we've invited DCFO Wayne Brown from West Midlands Fire and Rescue Service to come to deliver a inspirational talk on his journey to get to the top. I've listened to Wayne Brown before, and he's a very inspirational person and has a very compelling story to tell about his journey. Hopefully that will be an inspiration for many of our staff within the organisation. DICE training, I mentioned just now, we are underway with the middle managers DICE training. We've now completed 6 workshops, around about 44 managers. We've got the same amount to go through still. So far the feedback has been very positive, some very good feedback on what managers have experienced in those training sessions, and more importantly, the tools that were introduced in those sessions. Managers have already come back to us saying that they've actually been able to use those not only in the workplace but also in their own sort of personal lives as well. That training will continue. We plan to do the whole organisation, including watch managers this year and crew managers and the rest of the organisation next year. We'll keep you updated with the progress on that one. In terms of the culture change, we have been, even before lockdown, we have been running workshops, pilot workshops, mainly on stations, to give people a chance to talk about how they feel about the culture change, whether they think it's progressing, and to see where they can help to progress that program. Obviously, the COVID-19 stops us from doing any face-to-face sessions, so we did go virtual. They were quite successful, including the virtual sessions that we held with our cultural advocates. There was mixed feelings about where we are with the culture. Personally, I feel that we are making progress, but as you will all know, culture change is a very long-term and you know, it's in evolution, so it will take a number of years to see you know, major progress on that. But we are working very hard with all departments to make sure that it is embedded in terms of our values and our behaviour framework. We have been working diligently to address the actions on our HMIC FRS action plan, and also the culture change action plan. And again, we are making very good progress on both of those action plans. We've incorporated many of those actions into our DICE strategy, into the training that we have been delivering, ensuring that the training has been tailored to address some of those issues raised in the reports of previous years. And again, we continue to progress on that one, and embed our values and behavioural framework throughout the organisation. And that is it for my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have any comments or questions from members on the update? Can't see anything in the chat. No, just a couple of things then. It looks as though there's some good collaboration with Bristol City Council actually, which seems pretty positive and a good way to share resources. Just going back to, I know that there were some meetings offered to staff following Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
I don't know if those are the ones that are referred to in that report, but I just wondered, was there any more take up on those, or was there any more support that was needed? Did anybody come forward to ask for any more support?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Yes, we did reach out to, in particular, our BME staff. However, during that period, you know, the sort of 3 or 4 months into COVID-19, and the reports that came out that Black people were more or disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and then obviously with the Black Lives Matter movements and the events that happened, I think the Black community was very, very sensitive, and you know, a lot of discourse, some positive, some negative, and in terms of who we had very small numbers responding. I'm not going to guess why that is. I'm not going to make assumptions why that is. Everybody is different, and everybody will experience that period in a different kind of way. I think it's just about having patience, to be honest, Chair, and giving people time to you know, address any issues that they may have on a personal level or you know, within the service. But we will continue to offer support and reach out to our BME staff, and you know, hopeful that they in their own time they will respond. I am at the moment starting a few visits to stations, you know, and mainly on the request of stations wanting to come and talk about Black Lives Matter and other sort of issues that have been discussed on station. So there will be an opportunity again to sort of go in at a bit of a closer level, and sort of, you know, gain some trust and hopefully gain some insight on how our BME staff are feeling about all of that.
Great, thank you, Richard. And if I have capacity, then I'd be happy to join you on some.
You've been most welcome. Thank you.
In a socially distanced way, of course.
Of course.
Brenda, you've got a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just wondering, when you have your speaker, who sounds very good, are you going to record that so people can listen to it afterwards?
Well, it's a good question. If everybody's happy, and obviously if the speaker's happy to record that, then that will be the case. This falls into a series of inspirational speakers that corporate comms are actually leading on. Last week we had the gentleman that was involved in the rescue of the 12 boys that were stuck in the cave. You know, yes, and it was very, very interesting, very inspiring and conversation there. I think that was actually recorded. So again, if everybody's happy with that, then yes, we will record it, because I think it is something that many other people would find interesting.
Yeah, it certainly sounds it. It would. I think that would be great if you could. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you.
I just wanted to sort of say as well, Wayne Brown is actually one of 3 senior or director level managers of a BME background in the whole of the country in terms of fire and rescue services. So, you know, that's more the reason why people really need to listen to his journey.
Thank you. That does sound really good, and something that, if we can get onto YouTube, might also help us extend our reach a bit. Brilliant. Just one final point to note, that the calendar sounds like a great idea. And just so you know, the Bristol Cable, which is a kind of independent journalist output, really, they've also started to do a community calendar, so you can also check on there to
Sure.
there's some bits and pieces to pick up on.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lake, Councillor Johnson would like to ask a question.
Sorry, Councillor Johnson, I didn't see that.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd just like to ask, because you said about getting feedback from the BME staff. So 2 parts to this question. Is there a BME support group? How are you getting that information? And also, is there facility for people who are non-BME to support in some ways? And I ask that because in other areas of my work, we're looking to support, to set up a BME stroke allies group as well, because one of the strongest things that came out for me by observation from the BLM protest stroke movement in Bristol was the powerful sight that it was to see people from every background walking together. And for me, this is not a it's definitely not a black versus white thing. It's a black and white thing together versus racism. And I think there's a really powerful statement and way of being to hold on to in this journey that we are on. And so elsewhere that I work, I'm actually in the process myself of setting up a BME stroke allies group so that we're moving forward together. And so I'm just interested, 1, on your thoughts on that, 2, do we have a BME group, 3, how would the non-BME members who support be able to feed into all of this and be part of that progress as well?
Sure, thank you. As you probably know, the BME staff within our organisation are very low in numbers, a little over 2%, and are spread quite far and wide across our service areas in terms of our stations. To date, there is not a support group for BME staff. And in terms of other protected characteristics, there isn't any specific support group as yet. However, we do have a staff engagement network, which is a forum where all manner of discussions take place, whether it be operational, whether it be personal, or sort of staff-based as well. It is something that we are working on, but what I think is most important is this is not something that we should force on anybody. I think if there is an appetite for that, then obviously we would give it the full support. I think the first thing, certainly for me, is to form some kind of consultation with our BME staff. I mean, I've been with the organisation almost 2 years, and just due to the sort of nature of the work, I haven't been able to sort of go out as much as I want to and meet some of our BME staff. So some of those members of staff don't even know who I am. So I think that's the first port of call, really. sort of having that initial meet, having some discussions about the appetite for a support group, whether people feel that they need it or not, would be quite interesting as well. So I kind of hope that answers that part of your question there. In terms of
Can I just chip in before you move on? Because now that we're living in this virtual world, it's the perfect opportunity, because you now don't have to physically go around and meet anyone. You can meet, you know, virtually now. So even though there's only few of you, if there is a need, desire, or appetite, as you say, you now have the opportunity to meet because of the virtual world that we are now in. So this could be a perfect situation to make that happen.
Yeah, that's a very, very useful point. And you know, again, during the heightened moments of Black Lives Matter, that was how we actually tried to engage with our BME staff. We set up a virtual Zoom chat, and unfortunately, we didn't have any takers. So, you know, we have to find out why that is. And so, you know, again, we are working towards how do we do that. Now, you know, I'm, you know, quite happy to send a personal letter or email to each of our BME staff, again, you know, asking, you know, if they feel there is a need for a support group, would they be interested? Is there anything that they would like to discuss or share with this sort of 6-month period that we've all gone through? Yes, I really do take your point, and that is, you know, obviously the quickest and at the moment the most efficient way to go about it. So we will keep trying until we sort of make some progress on that.
Yeah, I think, can I just encourage you, sorry to take this time, but just to encourage you, because yes, go ahead and keep trying to establish why people aren't engaging. But my encouragement is that as a service, it's important that you've put that olive branch out, regardless of the response.
Yeah.
And I think that is equally as important as whether people decide to connect or not. That's their option. But as a service, I think it's really admirable that you have made provision that if people want it, it's there. So well done.
Thank you very much. And just, I know that Councillor Khan wants to come in, but if I could just finish off with what you asked me before, and then he can come in. So in terms of non-BME support, I have spoken to a few managers on station managers where we know we have BME employees. Those few that I have spoken to are very, very supportive in terms of they know that there has been discussions on station which you know, have been quite polarized in certain respects, especially after the removal of the Colston statue. And they assured me that they have offered support to BME staff and made themselves available to discuss any feelings or any issues that our BME staff have actually experienced. And again, I've mentioned that I have been going to stations and I'm due to go to Western Station to have that discussion. And that, again, has been a request of those stations, you know, to find out a little bit more about, you know, what is going on. I'm also carrying Sari with me to Western to sort of give that, you know, that community angle as well. So and also just to sort of make the point, in our DICE training, you know, again, we incorporate, you know, the need for managers to be aware of diversity issues, you know, diversity and equality issues, and be available on call to provide support to not only to BME but to other staff that have protected characteristics as well. So that, again, is all part of, you know, upskilling our managers, upskilling the workforce in terms of support, guidance, and certainly is part of the culture change as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And just your last point then, in terms of, you know, what the images we saw in terms of Black Lives Matter. Yeah, you're right. You know, it's not necessarily a singly a black thing. The focus and the gender is, but the support that we've seen not only in the UK and in Bristol, but across the world, people unifying to say, look, on a human level, this is wrong. Okay, you know, I'm really pleased with the younger generations who have really kind of shown the way, to be honest, in terms of, you know, it matters who people are on a human level. You know, the old ideologies of skin color and other differences, you know, to me seem to be kind of withering away, but it's going to take a lot of time, and there's going to be resistance, there's going to be pushback, but at least we have some hope. And I think that is in the younger generations. And we certainly did see that in the protests that took place across the world.
Thank you.
I think we had Councillor Khan.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Right, so interesting to hear you, Richard. And also, I'm glad that Councillor Johnson has brought this point here today, or raised this. And what is really like recently, I mean, I'll share an experience. I'm not making a complaint. I'm not making a fuss. I'm not trying to achieve anything out of that. But since Councillor Johnson brought that into this, you know, into the equation, I think it's important I share this as well. So alliance is very important, and the respect to the alliance, and whether it is a white background person or Asian background person or whoever it is. But as a Black minority, I recently had an experience, kind of a painful experience, but I'm not trying to make a fuss about it. You know, but I will share the story. I was in a meeting and in my ward, and I was not able to speak in that meeting because I was not African Caribbean. But the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, when something like this happens, we need to understand that it's not, if I'm a victim of a racist attack or any kind of racism, it's not my issue. I may be an individual being a victim, but it is your issue. It is Cleo's Lake's issue. It is Carol Johnson's issue. It is Brenda Massey's issue. It is each and every one of ours issue, because if we are in that alliance, so we need to be understanding of us as a BME as well as respecting our alliance, that who actually we are and what we are trying to achieve and what society we are trying to achieve. In this, you know, from our works and what is our objective. So a great job you guys are doing, and I'm grateful that Councillor Johnson is working on that, and I hope that this is something. You know, first of all, we as a BME people, we need to understand who we are and what is our objectives. And maybe, I mean, as I said in the beginning, I'm not trying to make it an issue or anything. Maybe we need to sometimes stop even playing politics within us, because sometimes in every cases, this comes into it and it's hampered the objectives in many cases. So we need to target, we need to know our objectives and works on that basis and bring everybody, BME people, including BME as well as the alliance that who are not BME. But, you know, I mean, even sometimes we call people coming from European and other nations, they could be classed as a BME. But whatever the BME is and whatever the allies are, it's very important that we work in collaboration, and to achieve the objectives and goals, we leave the politics apart. And so that is maybe something as a lesson we take forward.
Thank you for those points. Just to comment as well that of course we have the cultural advocates, and whilst that covers the whole remit of culture, because obviously that goes beyond race, they are of all ethnicities, really, aren't they? So we do have that element. And I think it's been raised before, but whether there's, because our numbers of people who are non-white or from Eastern European, perhaps, minorities, then maybe there is also the opportunity to link with, say, the staff networks at Bristol City Council, given that you're already having that collaboration anyway, and they may feel more comfortable just to join a group that already exists and does have numbers. So perhaps not necessarily a social event, but an event where, or somewhere, a forum where they can come into that might be a way forward as well. I think,
Yeah.
Simon, did you want to still come in, Simon, on something?
Yes, please, Chair. Just very, very quickly. I think Richard's been very modest, actually, in the work that he's been undertaking, particularly around Black Lives Matter, both on a personal and a professional level, in being able to unify the workforce collectively, ensure that any division that may well possibly occur is minimised, and engaging with staff, even, like I say, as Councillor Johnson mentioned earlier on a virtual level. And providing individual support alongside colleagues in HR and also in the health, safety and well-being department as well. So I think he's been very modest. We've got the right person in the right position, both on a personal and professional level. And I'd just like to acknowledge that and the work that Richard's done so far.
That's excellent. Thank you for the acknowledgement, and let us all echo that.
Yes, definitely.
And recognise how challenging it must be. And also, as you alluded to, and I know we have got it on the agenda later, Black Lives Matter, but the toppling of the statue, if there were polarised views, how on earth do you deal with that? And how do you try and put a view across when it's not going to be a popular view? Or what can you say being in a professional situation? So yeah, Brenda's just dipping out of the meeting and hopefully dipping back. I've only read half the message. So
and 11:30, Chair. Sorry, it's a really unexpected licensing issues just popped up that I need to deal with.
Okay.
I'll come back as soon as I can after about 12. It should be okay.
Great, thank you.
I'll stay here until then.
Right, well, that was a great discussion on agenda item 7, and we're now going to move to agenda item 8, which is the HR and recruitment update. And Karen, to present, please.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, I'm Karen Shield and I'm the head of HR here at Avon Fire and Rescue Service. So I'll start off with an apology. I think I've given you quite a lot of numbers and statistics in my report, which sometimes statistics can be a good thing, but equally they can lead us sometimes down the wrong path. And we were talking just now about some of this stuff being an individual issue as opposed to a BAME issue. And I do think that we definitely have some further work to do in looking at our statistics, looking at a number of our candidates. Particularly, you will see 102 people didn't want to declare their ethnicity, and we also have similar issues for sexuality. So there's a lot of discussion out there. Lots of people don't want to be categorised. They don't want to be put into a BAME box. And also there's some trust issues around what that information is going to be used for. So I do think that we need to really, at the end of this campaign, the same as we do at any campaign, sit down, myself, Richard, and really go through the statistics. Obviously, our primary responsibility is to make sure that there is no adverse impact in any of our recruitment stages. And if there is any adverse impact, can they be justified, or should they be modified, taken out, other things that we can do to make sure that it truly is a level playing field and that everybody has an equal opportunity throughout the selection process. But I also think I'm in danger sometimes of making assumptions, even when I look at some of the stats, and you look particularly at the information around the application form. We do require candidates to provide up to 1,500 words in their application form to explain what skills and experience do they have that makes them think that they would be a good firefighter, but also how do they model the values, the service values, which we've talked a lot about culture. The values are really important for us. It is a very competitive process, and we want to make sure that we're recruiting people that are the mindset where inclusion is really important to them. They understand it, they understand about working in the community, they know what our community is, etc. So it is quite a dense part of the application form and quite important. And sometimes when I look at the BAME's statistics and where a number of people failed, so at the moment we had 18 people fail, is that because, for example, English is a second language for them? Do they struggle with sometimes being able to sell some of their experience? Have they had the opportunity to have some of the experiences that maybe their white counterparts have had? So I think there's a lot of work that we need to do, and we undertake analysis of people that are successful, and we also survey the people that are unsuccessful to try and get information. But of course that is quite difficult, and sometimes it has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because anyone who's been unsuccessful will have a particular view of the selection process. So I think there is some work in progress that we need to do to just really make sure, particularly at our application form stage, have we got things right? Are there different things that we can do? We put a huge amount of guidance out on our website to help candidates, and we've done some things like Facebook Live and events, which obviously I know Councillor Lake, you've been along to some of my sessions where I'm trying to help and support candidates from all backgrounds and to put them in this, the best opportunity possible to compete with the other 800 people that are in the process. So I definitely think there's some more work that we need to do. So I won't talk you through all of the statistics. What I will say is that yesterday afternoon we finished the strength, fitness and the NFS tests. So we could only finish yesterday afternoon. We're still looking at all of the stats and looking at how many people we still have within the process. However, unfortunately, I think the early indications are that, as we unfortunately expected, a number of the female candidates have failed on the strength test. That is always a case. Females tend to be built differently to males, and so it's something that they struggle with. However, that was made worse this year, because obviously on the 20th of March, all gyms were forced to close and didn't reopen until fairly recently. They need to lift quite a significant amount of weight. So it's a 35 kilogram shoulder press and a 60 kilogram pull down. Obviously, Councillor Lake, you make it look easy and you passed the process when you gave it a go. But actually, I know it isn't easy. I go to the gym every day and I struggle to do that test. So we have found, I think, probably a higher proportion of females have failed that process. Our fitness advisor gave them some help and support. So immediately the gyms were open, he gave them an intensive training plan to try and hopefully make sure that they were able to pass. And we also put the females on, or we gave them the option, but we suggested that females took the final day of testing. So whilst it only gave them another couple of weeks, it actually meant that they had an extra couple of weeks of training, and we trained the females last, which is why that was only yesterday, so some of those statistics I can't present to you today. However, the trainers also told me this morning that about 4 females just didn't turn up. I suspect because females still find it maybe sometimes humiliating in front of their white and their male counterparts, that maybe they're going to struggle with that strength test. So they maybe have tested themselves within the gym environment, thought that they weren't going to pass and haven't turned up on the day. So that's just always such a shame for us when we do a huge amount of work to attract people from underrepresented groups and they don't sort of turn up or perform well within the selection process. So what I hope is at the next meeting, I'll be able to give you far more sort of detailed analysis once we're at the end of the campaign. But at the moment, we're hopefully moving forward with the interviews, which is scheduled for the beginning of October. At the moment, it's looking like we will be interviewing between 90 and 100 candidates, so quite a task. But what we commit to everybody is, if they've passed every stage of the process, our commitment to them is to sit down and make sure that we meet them face to face, and that we have that opportunity to really sort of, tease out some of their experiences, some of their views, and ask them about our community and what they would do to become an excellent firefighter. And that is far more, we try and make it an informal process. It's quite a structured interview, but we try to put candidates at ease. And COVID restrictions aside, what we're hoping is that we can do those interviews face to face with a member of HR on every panel to deal with issues such as potential unconscious bias, and also to have a female on all the panel, bearing in mind most of our uniform staff are male, but we've also got a uniform member of the panel as well to sort of give us that blended mix. So those interviews will take place in October. Obviously, we've got a fallback position that if things change between now and then in terms of COVID, we could do those interviews via Zoom or telephone, but my preference would be to carry on face to face. The other issue that I'd like to bring to your attention in terms of COVID, obviously it's been really challenging. I'm quite proud that we've managed to process over 800 candidates during a period of a global pandemic. However, we are looking at the training school plans, which are starting in January. As you might expect, that due to social distancing, it may be that we need to reduce the training school number, and we'd hope that we would be recruiting 16 people in January. We definitely need them because our establishment levels are such that we really urgently need new recruits, but obviously our priority is to make sure that we can keep them safe and also our training staff safe. So we're in the process of doing a risk assessment, but it's likely that we may need to reduce those numbers, and we could have to reduce those numbers by as much as 50%. So we may only be able to take 8 people on in January and then hopefully have a further training school in April. But again, I can keep you updated on that. As you probably know, everything is changing on a daily basis with the pandemic. So before I go on to other aspects, I just wondered, do you want me to pause there, Chair, for any questions?
Yes, because I think Councillor Bromley would like to speak. Thank you, Karen.
Hi, thank you very much, Chair. I just had a couple of questions, really. I'm just looking at the behavioural styles questionnaire. I just wondered what that is, really. And also I see that 190 candidates failed it, which seems quite a high proportion. So I just wondered sort of why that was, really. And then the second question really was, my background is in teaching English as a second language. And I just wondered, just interestingly, you talk about some candidates having to write 1,000, I think it was 1,700 words about their skills and experience. And I think that's probably quite a lot for anybody whose first language isn't English. I mean, just thinking about the test for students to get into university, they only have to write maximum 300 word essay, actually. So I would imagine for a non-native speaker to suddenly having to write a 1,700 word account of their experience is probably pretty challenging, really. And so I wondered if there was any way of sort of making that a little bit easier for them, and also, I suppose, thirdly, if people are recruited and their language levels are obviously not as good as, maybe not quite up to the mark, do we support people with their language needs in any way? I mean, are there any ESL, English as a second language lessons provided, for people? Thank you.
So the first question around the behavioural styles questionnaire, these were designed nationally by an occupational psychologist who worked with the Fire Service College. So they looked at the kinds of behaviours that firefighters or good firefighters, successful firefighters need to demonstrate. So things like working in a team. So they're multiple choice questionnaires. So a really obvious one would be if somebody said they didn't like working in a team, then probably they're not going to pass. If they say they don't like taking instruction, or if they say they prefer to maybe have a bit more laissez-faire attitude to things as opposed to following rules. There's a lot of that. So it's all of those, that maybe making it overly simplistic, but those are the kinds of questions that modelled. And obviously there's a lot of data analysis that is done, not just on our recruitment campaign, but on campaigns nationally across the Fire and Rescue Service to continually look at those questions, and also to do some modelling against existing firefighters to put them through the same test to make sure that they remain accurate and correct. And the occupational psychologist who we use has offered, if it would help, because he's far more au fait and experienced in being able to explain these things than I am, he's offered to attend one of these meetings or provide some extra information if you think that that would be useful in the future. So I'm very confident that those tests are valid and they're reasonable, and I would be really worried if some people didn't pass. They said fairly minimum requirements that you would expect of behaviours. I think we would inherit problems later on down the line if we didn't use that test or something very similar. But obviously it's absolutely right that we continually check the questions that are asked to make sure that they're accurate and giving us the kind of candidates that do have the potential to be a firefighter. Does that answer that part of your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, it does. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And in terms of English as a second language, I think I'm making some assumptions here, because of course that may not be the case. I don't know all of these applicants, and I think there is a danger of me making those assumptions. But I have wondered as to, is there a possibility that it may be that English isn't their first language, or they just don't have a particularly good academic ability, or sometimes women tend to not sell themselves in the same way that sometimes their male counterparts might. So there's a whole myriad of issues going on here when you're expecting people to sell themselves within the application form. It's 1,500 words, which I agree with you, it is a lot. It used to be 2,000 words, and we've reduced it. That's a maximum. Candidates don't need to do that. And if they can present information, we try and encourage them to use bullets and headings to make sure their information stands out. We give them quite a lot of examples of things that they could potentially use. And like I said, we've had Facebook Live where people can phone in and get some, also join in through Facebook Live to ask some questions. However, I do think that when we spoke previously, and I know Councillor Bromley, you weren't on the previous People and Culture Committee when we discussed this, I think a lot of people are very surprised by how much classroom-based learning there is within that initial 12-week training school, how critical it is to understand some of that information. Obviously, from a safety critical, life critical, people have to understand a certain amount of written instruction and verbal instruction. And there is a huge amount, both obviously within the 12-week training school, but also within their 18-month or 24-month development phase and throughout their career. You know, we've got a huge number of policies, guidance, etc. So I think there is a baseline of language that we do require and expect, just to make sure people are safe. And that, so therefore, I'm not saying we've got it completely right. I think we do need to have another look at the application form to see, are there things that we can do where we have previously, we've invited people in that if English isn't their first language, or for any other reason they struggle to do that part. We have done face-to-face sessions with people. We weren't able to do that this time around purely due to COVID and some of the restrictions that presented. But taking into account points earlier on, could we have done that virtually? I think some of this, there was so much going on during this period, so there maybe are some things where we missed a trick, but we did put quite a lot of information on the website. So again, I do think they need a certain level of English language, but I do take your point that maybe there's some things that we can do to look at that again, analyse that to see, is that a barrier, and are there things that we should be doing differently. But I just wouldn't want to reduce it to such a level where then we don't want people to be set up to fail or to struggle when they start with us. We do quite a lot of help and support for people. So, for example, even dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, with English. So we have had particularly a number of people join us who are Eastern European, who have struggled sometimes with some of the grasp of English language or what is meant by a certain phrase. And the fire service is full of different acronyms and different phrases that wouldn't be part of maybe your day-to-day English language. The training team ask all of that before people start on the training school. Has anyone got any special needs in terms of learning styles? And then we look within, we do that very much on an individual level. So whether that's things that we can deliver within the service, or are there some extra help and support? So we have offered support to people maybe before the training school starts to help to get them up to speed beforehand, and then continually throughout their development phase. Again, does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just as one more brief question. Actually, I just wondered, do you have as a formal way of assessing their English language level? I mean, like, for example, as I said, students applying to go to university take the IELTS exam, which is the International English Language Testing System. Is there a formal sort of way of assessing their language level when they apply?
On the online test, you will see that two of the tests are maths and English test. So on the English test, that's set to functional skills level 2, which is a baseline that has been agreed nationally for firefighters to have, to be able to be competent, to be able to do all of the things I've just explained to you. Functional skills level 2 is that absolute baseline. So what one would hope, if they pass, they've already progressed through those tests. So by the time they get to the application form stage, they have demonstrated that they have got that functional skills level 2 level before before they go on, both obviously to the application form and then also to the interview, which requires people to, like I said, with the interviewers try and help people as much as possible, but you do need people to be able to express themselves quite clearly and effectively within that interview. At the end of the day, it's going to still be a very, very competitive process. If we're going to be interviewing 90 to 100 people, potentially we're only going to be taking 8 people, worst case scenario, on that January training school. Obviously, we hope we will also have then a further training school in April, and then a decision will also be made as to whether we hold a waiting list. So I think it's always this balance between making sure people have that equality of opportunity and ability to perform at their best, albeit it is probably the most competitive recruitment process in the country. I think firefighting is still a very much a career of choice for very many people.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Karen, just a quick one. In terms of the no-shows for the physical part of it, did they all message to say they weren't attending?
No, my understanding is that they just didn't turn up. So again, that'll be a piece of work. I only found out that this morning. So it is, again, quite disappointing because we do a huge amount of work and we have very much a day-to-day contact with my team and regular contact with candidates. So I need to find out why people don't turn up. It's not just females for the fitness and strength test. You will see all the way through the process, there's people that just don't complete tests, don't complete the application forms, don't turn up on the day. We've even got people that got all the way through to the final interview stage that have just not turned up. So whilst we will do all we possibly can to help and support candidates, it is a little bit worrying that if people can't even turn up with and not send an email or a message to explain the reasons why. But we definitely need to follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
And then I just didn't know whether you just want me to go through the part I put in the end of the report around some of the work that's happened during the pandemic to support our existing workforce. All I would want to say really is that I'm just really proud of the work that we've done. It's been an incredibly challenging time. Our workforce are fantastic anyway, but we were very fearful in March as to what that could mean for us in terms of our resilience and our ability to continue to provide the service to the community. Actually, that wasn't borne out, whether some of that obviously was luck, but it was also a lot around the social distancing, hygiene, and all of the measures that we put in place and that the government put in place, and also that we were able to go over and above some of the government guidelines. So there were a number of staff, and I don't want to steal Richard's thunder because he may cover some of this in his report later, but a number of people who had household members who were vulnerable, and the government guidance didn't say that they would have to not attend work, so our employee could have still attended work, but we were very benevolent. So actually a couple of those were BME staff who were maybe at higher risk. Maybe for one, it was their partner was pregnant or their wife was pregnant. Another one lived with a very elderly relative, her grandmother, who was very, very vulnerable with many health conditions. So the bottom line was we could have required those people to attend work, but we didn't. We paid them in full for that 12-week period. Wherever possible, if they were able to do some work from home, then they did that, but that wasn't a requirement upon them. So I'm just really proud and really pleased that we've been able to support all of our staff through what was a very difficult period of time for the whole world, and obviously very anxious for them and their families. We had family members, somebody's son who was aged 9 and going through leukemia treatment, so we made sure that he was able to stay at home to keep him and his son safe. We also provided accommodation to people, so we helped pay for accommodation or provide free accommodation at Seven Park and other facilities. And again, this is where the fire service family comes in, where lots of people on the watch would say, well, I've got a spare bedroom, you can come and stay with me for free if you want during that 12-week period, so that you can keep your family member safe. So there was all of that work going on. And then also, not only did we carry on with our fire service work, you may also be aware that we did a lot of volunteer work, both with South West Ambulance Service Trust, but also body recovery work. Some of this work was in preparation for if COVID got particularly bad in the southwest, and obviously we were very lucky that it didn't. But many of our staff potentially would have had very different work experience when they were dealing with the ambulance work, maybe transporting people who were very, very ill, transporting people to Nightingale hospitals, etc. So we immediately put in place additional counselling provision. We've got counselling provision in place already, but that's generally Monday to Friday, 9 till 5 kind of hours, but we put out of hours services in place so that if anyone came off the 12-hour shift with the ambulance service and was feeling really traumatised by that, they could immediately phone a counsellor and get immediate help and support to hopefully help them diffuse, offload, and be able then to get a good night's sleep before their next shift. And I suppose it's whether this is a success or not, but during that whole period, nobody phoned that additional counselling service provisions. We paid, I think it was around £8,000 for that additional provision. Nobody accessed that. So is that a success or not? We need to do some more analysis, but everyone said actually they really, really enjoyed the work. They felt they were being a valued member of not just the fire service, but also of the ambulance service and providing that support to the community. So again, we need to do some more work around that to find out, you know, are people, in terms of mental health and anxiety, are people accessing the help and support that is available to them? If not, why not? And try and get that conversation to happen. And also for our on-call staff, many of those whose primary employment was affected due to COVID, so sometimes they were self-employed, they weren't able to do their normal work, or they were furloughed or laid off from their primary employment. In order to maintain our resilience throughout the period, we enabled them to be able to do overtime shifts, so it helped them to increase their finances, but also provide us with the resilience that we needed.
Thank you, Karen. I think Simon wanted to come in, and then do let me know if anyone else wants to make a comment or have a question or has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Before I do, I think Councillor Johnson has been waiting for a question for a little while, so I'll hand over to Councillor Johnson first.
Thank you very much. That's very gracious of you. Karen, my questions relate to what you were previously saying, so apologies about that, but I have had my hand up for a little while, and I just wanted to know about, did you call it the Facebook or the Process Live? I just wanted to know how, yeah, I just wanted to know how that's advertised and how would candidates find out about that kind of support.
It was on Twitter.
Go on.
Sorry, the communications team publicised that in various ways. It was on Twitter. We have a number of people, or all of the candidates, signed up for regular updates through the Yes You Can website. So there's a portal on there where candidates that are either in the process or potentially interested in joining could sign up for updates. So then at least a week in advance, we say we're doing this Facebook Live and it was done in an evening. We found that would be the best time to catch people. And I think we had, I can get the statistics for you, Councillor, but I think it was well over 1,000 people at one point in time that were logged on to that. So it was, and lots of interactive questions. And then what we did was we also put that on the website thereafter, so if people hadn't been able to join, they could see some of the questions that were asked and some of those responses, and it was also videoed and people could catch up on it later. I'm not a Facebook expert, I'm afraid, so I'm not aware of all of the technicalities of it. No. If they weren't able to join in, they could access after.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm just, my concern about that would be that only people who were perhaps actively thinking about becoming a fire person would perhaps be going to the web page. And the issue there with BME, people from BME backgrounds, is that unfortunately sometimes with opportunities like this one, they rule themselves out before they've got all the information. And I was just wondering, Richard, if there's any way of getting that information even outside of the fire Facebook and network, so that it's you're casting your net wider, so that people start to include themselves in the conversation and understand that you are looking for BME firemen, and it is something, and women, and it is something that they should consider. And if they are considering it, there are supports, and here you go, and you can go. And then I think we just need another step to be put in previous to what you've got there already.
And apologies, I probably didn't make myself very clear. The Facebook Live, it was about the campaign. So these were people that were already in the process. It was run at a time where they'd already put their hat in the ring, so to speak, and said they want to apply. And this was to help them through each stage of the process, to explain each stage of the process, and to give them some tips and some information. Prior to that, we obviously did positive action, which we updated in previous meetings, which included a number of events to do exactly that. But also we're engaged with, I think it's about 83 organisations now, is it, Rich, out in the community, including SARI. So it's about them sharing that around their networks. We were also on Radio Ujima and various other, just to try and publicise them and say to people, these campaigns are happening. You know, this is when we're going to start recruiting. But I know, as Councillor Lake knows, we did a huge amount of work for the event that we ran at City Academy in Bristol, but we were quite disappointed with the turn up. So you're absolutely right. I think we do a lot of work, and we talked previously around maybe we're not doing it in the right way. How can we work with SARI and other organisations? So how can we get the people that haven't even considered a career in the fire service, or have considered it and thought it's just not for me and I wouldn't be successful? So that's absolutely work in progress.
Thank you. And I've just got two other questions which are relating to women. You mentioned the strength test, and I hope that this is a really silly question, but you said 35 kilos, and I'm hoping that is just for females and there's a different strength test for the males, is there?
No, it's
exactly the same.
Yes,
so it's exactly the same.
Yeah, because they have to lift exactly the same ladder, Councillor. So it's a quarter. Simon will correct me now if I get this wrong, but we have what's called a 125 ladder, and 35 kilograms represents a quarter of the weight of that ladder. And the ladder lift is a 4-person lift. So a female firefighter or any firefighter must be able to lift their share of the ladder, and it wouldn't be what we've done. If the danger would be if we lowered the standard, then those females wouldn't be able to do the job for which they're employed. However, what we do for females is we have what we call a red, amber, green so tracking system. So 35 kilograms is the absolute what really we require them to do. If they can't lift 30, then they're out of the process completely. If they can lift 32.5 kilograms, we say, actually, you have passed. So technically, they haven't quite met the threshold, but with some input from Manuel, who's our fitness advisor, he's confident that then they can get to the point, and then we would retest them before we actually appoint them and give them a job offer. We would retest them at that point. So yeah, unfortunately, it does have to be the same test because the equipment is heavy. There's a whole piece of work looking at whether some of our equipment can be lighter, but particularly for ladders, and also some of the car cutting equipment is incredibly heavy equipment. In some cases, it has to be obviously safely operated without cause of injury.
Thank you for that explanation, because that really does help me to understand better the thinking behind it. I'm so curious about it because as part of GAFSIP, when we went out to the Gambia, they have got, almost 50% of their team are female. And I just wonder how, what is different, how they're able to lift that, requirement, and we're not able to achieve that here. So I wonder if we could look into that. Mm-hmm. And my very last part to this, Karen, thank you for your patience, is I think you mentioned that you felt that perhaps some of the female candidates might not do so well having to lift or perform in front of their male counterparts, I think you said. And I just wondered, do they have to do it in front of the male counterparts? Do we have to do it that way, or can they do it separately? Why can't we separate them?
So this time we did a female-only session, which was run yesterday. So females were given that opportunity to come as a female-only group. To be honest, we haven't always done that. And there's, again, different schools of thought that actually on a watch, they may be the only female in amongst all of the men. So they have to be the kind of person that is able and willing to put themselves out there and work successfully within a group of males and be confident in their abilities and know that they got that job on their merits. However, I think within the selection process, it's also making sure that they can do it in a safe space where they don't feel that they are competing with men that find that process very easily. So yesterday, yeah, it was a female-only session. However, some females chose, we didn't make that mandatory. Obviously, if females wanted to go along to a mixed session, they could do. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Karen. That's really helpful.
I think he's trying to unmute. Also, sorry if I've missed people. Councillor Johnson, sorry for missing your hand. If possible, could you also, as per the Zoom guidelines, maybe
You're forgiven.
Maybe type in the chat so that I've more chance of clocking it. Just indicate somehow in the chat that you want to speak, so that I in case I miss someone's hand. Richard, unless he's frozen or something, or he's trying to.
I'm not frozen. No, so I'm not frozen. But I just wanted to pick up on a point Councillor Johnson made in terms of people self-selecting themselves out of the process, or even not considering, the fire service as a employer of choice. We're working with corporate comms at the moment to try and improve or be a bit more diverse in terms of the images that we portray the fire service. So as you will all be aware, you've seen the fire trucks and other appliances whizzing by with wrappings on them. Probably one of the most popular ones you would have seen would be supporting Pride, our Pride truck. So we're looking at sort of taking that a little bit further in terms of our diversity, and at the moment we're actually working with or seeking a community group that is to design a wrap for one of our trucks in time for Black History Month, or just post Black History Month. Again, to sort of as looking at one particular protected characteristic in terms of encouraging the community to consider or join the fire service. Equally, I'm working with the DWP, one of those groups of partners that we work with regularly, and have done last year on a program called Mentoring Circles, where we have 10 to 15 young people from diverse backgrounds, and we do 5 or 6 weeks of mentoring with them. At the end of that whole process, they get a certificate, but that also gives me chance to to sort of explain our organization, and part of the recruitment process I actually took along to one of the sessions that I did last year, our application form, and just sort of explained what the process is like. So these are initiatives that really we could build some framework around them, embed them properly, but we are still working on those things. And also with the help of the University of Bristol, to try and get some insights and understand some trends in terms of what are young people looking for. And I think another point as well, just the last point here, is and it's kind of an interest of mine really. What impact has the recent issues with BLM? What impact has that had already on people's attitudes towards uniform services, services that quite often are very homogenous, and generations within BME communities and other communities will sort of pass down that information to say, well, actually there's not many of you there. Has that had a further impact? So I think there is an opportunity to do some real research on attitudes, and so certainly we will be discussing those things within the groups that we work with.
Okay, I'm not seeing anyone indicating that they wish to speak. So one last check. No. Okay, so thank you for the update, Karen, and all the work and efforts that are being made. And so we move on now back to you, Richard, for agenda item number 9, which is the COVID-19 impact on employees. I know we've touched on some of this, but
yeah, that's right. I will just give you an overview. I know that there is a lot of information in the public domain. A lot of it you've probably read yourself, but I just want to just go through some key facts then, and you know, intertwine the impact that it potentially had on our own organisation. So some of the sort of key factors then, it's been made clear that there are particular protective characteristics that are more susceptible to infection and also you know, sort of death from COVID-19. Age is one of those, and particularly for people over 70 that have been identified by the Public Health England as clinically vulnerable. You know, this in terms of our own organisation, you know, we have 406 members of staff between the ages of 46 and 66, you know, which represents about 45%, and 177 members who are between 17 and 35 years old. Now, obviously, the older people in society are more susceptible, and although all ages, you know, can and has been shown can catch COVID-19 and also, you know, die from it. The younger end of our population, you know, it seems to be less at risk, and so the reports and the research has shown. So in terms of our own organisation, I think there is due need for concern, as we do have an ageing workforce, and you know, not just whilst they are employees, but you know, potentially after they leave as well. So I know that health, safety and well-being are looking into, you know, the impacts of that, and we are, as DICE, are working closely with them to try and get an understanding of the impact on that particular, you know, protected characteristic or in terms of age. Another key area is gender as well, and you know, in the UK and globally, you know, data again from the Public Health England and other bodies from other countries have shown that 60% of people admitted to hospital and have caught and died from the disease are men. And again, sort of in sort of polar opposite of that is obviously women have been associated with 20% lower mortality. So, you know, again, for our organisation, men account for 82% of the organisation, and almost 20% are women. Just to give you an example, in the US, twice as many men have died from the virus as women, and the same again across Western Europe, where about 69% of all coronavirus deaths have been male, and similar in China and other countries as well. And again, it's just an area that we do need to, along with age, you know, sort of keep our eye on, and ensure that, you know, the right support and the right guidance is given to our employees, especially if they are presenting. And I know Karen's sent out, or HR and Karen sent out letters to employees that, you know, have presented. And that letter gives guidance to, certainly in terms of returning to work, procedures to take, and guidance for managers as well, in supporting those employees coming back. I think out of all of the protected characteristics, and certainly not forgetting intersectionality here, and the one that's been in the media the most has been around ethnicity, in particular BME. The reports and research have shown that BME, certainly in this country and in others, are 3 times more likely to catch COVID-19 and die as a result of that. In May 2020, researchers from the University of Glasgow, about people in England were at the highest risk of having laboratory confirmed infection. And in particular, there was other associated risks, which included comorbidities. They also found that Black and Asian minority groups were 3.4 and 2.4 respectively, more likely to die or test positive and die from COVID-19. And also Pakistani people from Pakistani ethnicity were 3.2 times more likely to test positive than in comparison to white British people. Again, in June this year, Health Secretary Matt Hancock said that people, or announced that people from BME backgrounds were disproportionately dying from coronavirus, and that was backed up by the Office of National Statistics and Public Health England. And both organisations suggested potential reasons could be things to do with existing health inequalities, housing conditions, public-facing occupations, structural racism and discrimination, and deprivation and social inequalities. And the Women and Equalities Commission in June this year have launched an inquiry into the different and disproportionate impact that coronavirus has had on BME communities and people, and the measures to tackle it, and see if they can glean any more information as to the causes of this. In terms of our own organisation, there are 17 members of staff who have identified themselves as of a BME background, and that accounts for around about 2%. And as I mentioned earlier, we have reached out to that particular group, not only in terms of Black Lives Matter, but it also in terms of COVID-19, to have that conversation if there is any concerns around that. And to date, and Karen may want to update me on this, but to date we are aware of 2 members of staff from BME backgrounds that have taken shielding measures. Again, a letter has been sent out to them. They're isolated for 12 weeks. Important to say that they weren't actually suffering from the effects of COVID-19, but it was the fact that they were living with people who were vulnerable and possibly presenting themselves. So yes, so only 2 to date that I'm aware of in terms of BME and protected characteristics. Karen can update me if there's any more since that last update. But just to cover up a couple more things before I finish then. The Culture and Inclusion Manager myself launched that Black Lives Matter Zoom discussion in June. And as I said earlier, we will continue not only on that basis, but also on the impacts of COVID-19. We'll continue to reach out to those employees and others to see, if there is a further support, guidance, information that we can pass on to them to obviously, reassure them that we do have this, in hand. And DICE and the Health, Safety and Wellbeing team have been working together in terms of returning employees and staff back to the organisation, and advised on their guidance they've sent out, guidance document they've sent out to managers, which outlines considerations for equality in the workplace and having conversations with those employees coming back to the workplace as well. And also, again, with SARI, we are using those consultation opportunities to further get some insight and find if there's any emerging trends in the Black communities in terms of sort of COVID-19. Yeah, so that's where I will end on that update.
Thank you, Richard. This kind of goes into the next agenda item as well, really, in terms of the wider discussion. So does anybody have anything to reflect on based on what we've just heard, or anything to do with either Black Lives Matter or the impact of COVID, etc.
Can I just ask a question? Because you've said there's 2% people from BME background in the service currently, and earlier on you talked about I think you said 2 or 3 senior managers are from a BME background across the service in Avon and Somerset. I'm asking a question, or
no.
Oh,
Sorry, no. So yeah, thank you. I was referring to senior management, so DCFOs, CFOs, you know, that very top layer of fire and rescue services. So yeah, the point I was making there with DCFO Wayne Brown, he's one of 3 BME senior managers in the country in terms of all the fire and rescues across the nation. So you know,
so that's the country.
Yes. So that just
wow,
and that is partly the reason why I asked him to come and do this inspirational talk, because I think, you know, talking about with Karen, you know, recruitment and whether people see this as something that they would want to join. You know, when sort of my age, well, actually, it's probably a bit younger than me, actually, but, you know, when I hear his talk, it reflects on, you know, some of the experiences I had growing up and, you know, sort of working, my early working time, you know, and again, with Black Lives Matters, you know, the discourse, the conversations that have been had, you know, talking about systemic discrimination, you know, a lot of those things still exist that you know, people sort of same age group as Wayne and myself, you know, sort of 30 years ago were you know, rife, and you know, we need to know what are the effects of those generations on today's generations, and I think it just goes to show that, you know, having only 3 BME senior managers in the whole of the fire and rescue across the nation, you know, speaks 1,000 words in itself. So
yeah, absolutely.
You know, sort of Councillor Massey sort of said, "Are we going to record this?" I really hope we get to record that, because I think it's something that many people need to hear.
Need to hear that is incredible.
Yeah, a real struggle.
And shows that, yeah, it shows the importance of the work that you're doing, Richard, and everyone else, you know, and we need to address this disproportion that is off the Richter scale. That's 0 point something %, you know, which is ridiculous, because that is nowhere near representative of the communities that we are serving, which leads me to wonder whether there's another strand to the work that we're trying to achieve here. And, you know, we need to remain positive. These are not very positive figures, but we do need to remain positive, because we are working together to change that picture. So that's excellent. But I'm wondering if we're missing a strand here, which is something about, because we've talked about recruitment, how to get people in, but how about the pipeline once you're in? Because this is a very dismal picture as well. You know, a national picture that shows 3 BME people within the service on a senior level, as you say, is a picture that paints us out. Have I said that the right way? It's telling a story all by itself. And we, you know, Bristol is fast becoming known for its cutting edge approach. And you know, if we have to step out and set that example, then so be it. We've made a start. You know, we've had to face some really difficult situations, but the truth is we were beginning that journey before we had these protests as well. So that is a really good indication for us in this neck of the woods. And so maybe we need to take this to the next level now and start looking. Yes, we look at recruitment, absolutely essential, but at the same time, there's another balance, which is about the pipeline. Once we get people in, how are we supporting them to go up the ranks if they want to, because clearly this picture is telling us that there is systemic and structural racism at work. This, as simple as that, really. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's in this team, because actually we need to be here, and the sooner we start getting these things into action, the better. But well done, Richard, anyway, for everything you're doing.
I just mention one last thing, which is that in terms of a positive movement forward in terms of leadership, you know, as a graduate from the Stepping Up program, which was a brilliant program that I did for a year last year, we're now in cohort 3, which actually equals probably about coming on to 500-600 people have gone through that course. You know, this is a spearhead, you know, Bristol initiated, Bristol-led spearhead for the next generation of leaders, and changing that landscape of leadership across not only the city, but the country as well. And I know other cities have looked at the Stepping Up program as and tried to model that for their own cities. So, you know, there is hope. And I think that as much work as we can do at sort of community level and within organizations, I think there's still an equal amount of work to be done in terms of educating or highlighting the complexities of leadership to those groups, those underrepresented groups that may not have thought about going into leadership, or who are in leadership at the moment but are hitting those unconscious barrier walls and other sort of exclusion type barriers in place. And I can certainly say from graduating from that course, I've learned a great deal about leadership, about structures and structural discrimination. So there is hope coming, and it is in the form of those cohorts that are coming through Stepping Up.
No, well done.
That's positive to hear, and of course all of that training is important, and the empowerment and the skills that you've learned, but also you need the space within institutions to take the position, and I think that's the next element of it. Well, great discussion. I know that we're going to go into a presentation now, I think, by Simon. Does anybody else, because I do, need a short comfort break? Couple of nods, a couple of
yes, right. Yes, please.
Okay, well, let's just take a very quick 5-minute break, if that's okay. And then we'll be back with the presentation. So back before 5 past, please.
Yep.
Muted. I think most of us are back. Okay, great. Just another a note actually that I don't know how many of you are aware, but Bristol University actually had an initiative whereby they are in many ways trying to lobby for a change of the Equalities Act. Has anybody come across that?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that something that we've supported as a service or not? We have. Okay. So for those who are less familiar, I think it's to do with, in terms of recruitment, interviewing, only going out to certain groups in the first instance, if I'm right. Is that your understanding of it, Richard? So that seems quite significant, and I guess we'll keep an eye on that and bring that back at a future committee. Okay, great. So over to you, Simon, for your presentation for agenda item 11.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this really is a recap of where we've been with regards to our cultural journey, what we've done over the period of time. We've, since our last cultural survey across the organisation, and also a member discussion around thoughts on the next steps for our cultural review. I'll try and keep the presentation as short as I can, conscious of the time. So I'll just share the presentation with members, and then we'll talk through it. Okay, so good morning, members. Members that don't know me, and obviously for purposes of the YouTube, my name's Simon Shelton. I'm one of the Assistant Chief Fire Officers here within the organisation. So our cultural journey so far. What I want to do before we go on to our cultural journey is just remind members of our service plan, your service plan, where our vision is to provide the highest standard and best value service to the community. Our mission is to provide public safety through the 4 key areas of prevention, protection, response, and also organisational resilience. And then through delivery of our values, where we've recently refreshed our values about 2.5 years ago. And you can see our 6 values there of courageous, honest, ambitious, inclusive, transparent, and also respectful. And we deliver our mission and our vision through 2 key objectives. Those 2 key objectives are making our organisation stronger, and we do this by investing in our people and investing in our organisation. And the investment in our people is a key element here, and also through making our communities safer. So we undertook the cultural review in late 2017. We started the journey with a questionnaire going out to the whole of our organisation in early 2018, and the results being released in spring of 2018. And there were 4 key themes that came out of that cultural survey from feedback from staff. I won't talk through each of them, but the numbers at the end of each of those bullet points there are I guess, an important element to reference later on in the presentation. So our response to those 4 key themes, and also our response to the HMIC FRS inspection with regards to the people element of their findings from their inspection, is we developed a document called Making Avon Fire and Rescue Service a Better Place to Work. And that document picked out all of the key issues and came out with a 52-point action plan, if you like, in response to what the feedback we were receiving, both from the inspectorate and also from our staff themselves as well. And we are slowly working through that over our last 18 months or so, which has been previously updated verbally through previous People and Culture Committee meetings, and also Richard referenced that earlier on in his briefing of where we are to date. So just a recap of some of the things organisationally that we've done in 2019 and 2020. And so in early 2019, in February, we started to construct well-being areas within our workplace. That was very much driven from the workforce, and this is a recognition and response to improving our well-being offer to our service and to our employees, and obviously the importance of their mental health. In March, we also started to undertake some talking menopause events, and we worked with an outside organisation and in partnership with Avon and Somerset Constabulary to offer events talking menopause to our staff and also managers, and they were heavily subscribed, and we had a number of sessions over a period of a few months from March of 2019. In May, we appointed a professional in the health and wellbeing area to revisit our policy and our offering and work with colleagues in HR and occupational health, and really to, as I said there, to reinforce and extend our offer to our personnel and our staff in all areas of wellbeing. June, we established a cultural advocates group, and that was referenced earlier on, and we've been continually working with that group, which are volunteers from around the service who want to actively get involved to promoting a more positive culture and delivering some of the outcomes of making Avon Fire and Rescue Service a better place to work. September, quite an active period in September. We revised and launched the mental health action plan, or revisited the mental health action plan, revised the promotions policy, and that's been running now for 12 months. And we're currently undertaking a lessons learnt review following that 12 months. We introduced mediation sessions. So our service chaplain is a qualified wellbeing coach, and he supported the mediation sessions and offered that across the workplace. And we also then jointly operated the Springboard programme for women alongside and working with our colleagues in the police. October, we undertake the promotion of the Internal Mental Health Month. So a lot of events I'll talk through in a moment around some of the events that we undertaken to support good mental health. We launched our values and behaviour framework, and again, a slide later on will demonstrate that. And also We Are One platform using the Facebook Workplace. And again, just give an example of that a little later on. Richard's mentioned on a number of occasions our relationship, a professional relationship with SARI, and we signed a second service level agreement with them. Sorry, my apologies, initial service level agreement to provide some support from their expertise. And alongside that, internally, is in an effort to start to embed our values, is introduce recognition such as the Values Stars. In November, we signed the Time to Change Employing Pledge, and in December of 2019, we start to enhance our TRIM support, which is Trauma Incident Management support. So again, that's an early intervention mechanism. We introduced a new mentoring scheme to staff across the organisation to help in their development and also their career aspirations. And alongside reward and recognition, which is an area around staff feeling undervalued, we also then undertook an awards event for 30, 40 and 50-year service medals. That continued, some of the organisations we worked with in 2019 to support some of those areas. You can see there the various branding of the organisations. We said their same difference, they're talking menopause there. We signed the Time to Change Employee Pledge. You can see there we're working with SARI, Springboard. Navigators is also a leadership program as well, and alongside obviously personal development for men, personality profiles, etc. So that's a similar mechanism to that of Springboard. And then on the top right there, a key element of some of our offerings to our staff and the recognition of management investment and leadership investment. And we are currently using the apprenticeship platforms of level 3, level 5, level 6 and level 7 for the various managerial levels across our organisation with regards to their development. And very much maximising the apprenticeship levy, and we do spend more of that apprenticeship levy that we put into that account, which is you know, a big positive. And we have in excess of 50 employees at the moment currently on either on or gone through an apprenticeship program. In 2020, that continued. So we did some, Richard's referenced this in his presentation, the cultural awareness pilots talking about our values. We did some promotional events with corporate comms, Time to Talk Day, again around focusing on mental health and well-being. In March, despite obviously the pandemic hitting us across the country, we started to introduce values-based questionnaires in all of our interviews. We introduced a navigator program for men, which I referenced earlier on. Working with corporate comms, promoted International Women's Day. We started to use more and more what the platform we're using now. Zoom virtual meetings, and also using that platform, virtual mediation sessions also began. So we continue with the great work working with our chaplain that we've undertaken. In June, we launched a new e-recognition system alongside the Values Stars. So that's using our software platforms, making it more user-friendly. So it's much more fluid with regards to recognising good work and valuing staff across all areas of our workforce. Richard's already mentioned sort of the progress so far to date with the DICE strategy and the DICE training. I have a huge admiration for the Staff Engagement Network, in particular the chair of the Staff Engagement Network and those that work within that forum with regards to quite a number of virtual wellbeing events that have been run across the workforce. And we referenced one earlier that took place recently. And in September, alongside that, is we started to really start to gather momentum with quite a number of health and wellbeing Zoom events right the way across our organisation. COVID didn't stop us celebrating a number of key events throughout the year. I mentioned earlier on around the e-recognition. That's a software platform alongside our values. Because Pride didn't take place this year, we did a virtual Pride Memories event across the service. The top right picture there just demonstrates obviously what we're on now, using Zoom platform, and that is actually a screenshot of a wellbeing event, health and wellbeing event that took place. You can see the number of staff from right the way across the organisation that have taken part in that. To support that, we've also launched webcams on our operational stations as well, to enable all of our areas of our service to be able to access the Zoom wellbeing events and keep updated. Bottom left is an example, and also the middle bottom picture, examples of our wellbeing spaces that we started to introduce across the service. And we've had previously our discussion, the bottom right there, the picture there is quite a number of our staff here in Portishead supporting the movement of Black Lives Matter and an event that took place in Portishead itself. I mentioned earlier on about the Facebook Live and the We Are One platform around staying connected. Again, this was launched, We Are One and the Facebook Workplace was launched in the latter part of last year, but really we've been maximising the use of that to keep in touch with colleagues for the health and wellbeing events, but also general catch-ups, also sharing tips on health and wellbeing. Manuel, our health and wellbeing professional, has been supporting that, health, wellbeing and welfare team, our DICE team. So right the way across the organisation, maximising that platform to keep in touch with staff, in particular as they've been working remotely. Staff Engagement Network, just a very quick overview of some of the inputs and contributions to Staff Engagement Network. As I say, I have a huge amount of support for the Staff Engagement Network and the work that they're doing and contributing. Some of the key things there, instigated the rollout of mobile phones and all mobile mainline appliances. The area of the idea of the wellbeing spaces on stations and the budget set aside for that came from the Staff Engagement Network. Engaged on a number of operational issues, alert to mobilising, and also some improvements making there. Transfers and promotions policy, attendance management, PDR process, and a number of other policies there. and also engagement in our environmental strategy, in particular around ideas for reducing paper usage across the organisation as well. So a huge amount of work that the Staff Engagement Network has been undertaking and supporting the organisation. I mentioned around the launch of our Values Behaviour Framework. Again, this came through the Staff Engagement Network and the wider staff engagement, in particular around the content. So a piece of work that we undertook in consultation with the workforce is, we have our 6 values, but what does that mean to us? Let's get a common understanding across our organisation of what does good look like, and actually what does unacceptable look like. So the yellow there, what does good look like, and the blue, what does not so good look like, to support obviously that conversation around our values to encourage the positive element of displaying and working to our values in our day-to-day activities. Richard also mentioned around the DICE training and also the cultural workshops that we've just started to commence in the last 2 or 3 months. In particular, initially engaging with our middle managers from right the way across the organisation, with a view to rolling that out to the remainder of the organisation later on this year and also through 2021. Alongside that, what we also undertook is some staff engagement through the transformation team with regards to the frustrations across the organisation, mainly focusing on policy, procedure, IT. So we've been able to capture some feedback, some learning from there to be able to influence our next steps. And there are some good things, and there's also some things that we recognise that we need to continue and maintain the momentum to really meet our aspirations of making Avon Fire and Rescue Service a better place to work. So I'm not going to go through all of the bullet points here. You can see them for yourself, but you can pick out there some of the positive feedback that we've received from staff from across the organisation around some of the work that we've been undertaking in the last 18 months. Some of the things we also ask is, okay, what more would you like? What more would you like from the service there? You can see there's still a requirement for management and leadership skills training. So far, we've been offering that through the apprenticeship schemes, but we're also now in the final stages of developing a development pathway model, which is representative for all staff, so they can really start to map out their pathway to reach their career aspirations and their development. And again, you can see there around some other areas of the needs from staff and what they're saying they need more of, backing up decisions made by managers, avoid making decisions that might undermine managers' previous decisions, and ensure that staff follow correct channels to voice any concerns or complaints that they may have. Some concerns. So we also were brave and asked, what are your concerns with regards to the organisation at the moment? And you can see there now what I've started to do. The numbers in brackets start to then relate very much back to the 4 key themes from our original cultural survey. And just a reminder: strong command and control management style with low empowerment of staff at all levels. Staff feeling overstretched, undervalued and mistreated. The dominance of the male whole-time workforce with deeply entrenched divisions, and professional pride and close-knit teams. So 3 of the 4 areas you can see are already starting to still be prevalent out there in the workforce. And again, we also asked, okay, so what are the issues, the frustrations, with currently still being experienced across the workforce? And once again, there you can see in brackets that I've very much tried to relate them back to our original key themes, which identified that we're still on a journey of cultural change. 18 months, 2 years is not a long time to engage in a organisational wide change journey, if you like. And there are still things that we need to pay attention to, and still areas for us to work with staff constantly to achieve our aim of making Avon Fire and Rescue Service a better place to work. So again, I'm not going to go into each of those bullet points. A lot of this will correlate across to the work of the transformation team as well, and some of the areas that they're working on. in particular, sort of the bottom area here, hamstrung by policies and procedures, lengthy procedures to get approval for decisions. Some of our review of our policy and procedures will help in addressing some of those areas of frustration. Barriers. So we also ask, okay, so we've got these issues. Where are we? What are the areas of barriers that we need to address to solve some of the issues and to respond to some of your concerns? And again, there, as you can see, without reading each bullet point out, you can read them for yourselves, members. Is some areas that I've related to some of the 4 key themes again from the initial findings of the cultural survey. So, what model have we been using in regards to our cultural survey? Well, we use a model called ADCAR, which is a recognised model for organisational change. Starting at the bottom here of the journey, of the bottom of the road. The first one being around, oops, my apologies, let's just go back. The first one being around raising awareness, each individual's understanding why cultural change is needed. Second one being the D of the ADCAR model being the desire, each individual willing to actively support, engage and participate. Then we go on to knowledge, ability and reinforcement, which is where we want to be with regards to measuring success. Our own assessment, we're in between the A and the D, moving more towards getting closer and closer to the D element of our cultural roadmap around that desire, where each individual is willing to actively support our cultural journey, engage with it, and also, more importantly, participate in that improvement or areas for improvement. So that's where we think an honest reflection of where we are at the moment in the last 18 months to 2 years. So pulse check, this is where we are as a pulse check with regards to some of the feedback, capturing some of the feedback that we've received to date. Of course, we are still in the midst of a pandemic and come through a pandemic. So many people have struggled this year with their mental health for various reasons, work-related, isolation. Richard touched on some of the work that he's been undertaking with regards to Black Lives Matter, and also health and wellbeing team and HR. And Karen touched on some of the support that we've been providing to members of our organisation throughout COVID-19. Staff still feeling micromanaged, being experienced by staff. Again, that links a little bit to policies, procedures as well. Staff feel there's still a lack of trust across the organisations. There are divisions between staff groups, and we have recognised that through COVID. Also, that's been identified through us. Staff groups feeling isolated, excluded. So again, we need to particularly encourage areas of our organisation to be actively involved in our improvement journey. And again, some of the other areas without going through each bullet point, some of those have already been covered previously. So where do we go and what our next steps are? Well, in our service plan, we have committed to revisiting a cultural survey towards the latter part of 2020, which is the here and now. I shall stop sharing that so we can see each other on the screen. So that's where we are at this moment in time for members' views on that. We have lost a little bit of momentum as a result of COVID, but you can see by previous briefings from Richard and Karen that we've now started to pick up and gather momentum once again in there. We would still like to commit to that, demonstrate our commitment to that aspiration of undertaking another survey in the coming months. 2020, maybe stretching it a little bit, but certainly in the early part of 2021, we can certainly begin the work now to prepare for our next cultural survey, and the areas in which members feel as though we may want to revisit to get a sense check across our organisation. Given that the 4 key themes set aside our making Avon Fire and Rescue Service a better place to work is our journey. We do need to refresh that a little bit, make it a little bit more current and live, but focusing in those key areas, it would seem feedback to date are still areas of focus for us as an organisation. So I'll pause there and open it up to any conversation or questions that members might have.
Thank you, Simon. Anybody like to comment? Yeah, Shelley.
Hi, yes, thank you, Chair. It just seems like a lot of very impressive initiatives there. Very, very struck by. I'm new to the committee, so I just struck by a lot of the initiatives and the progress being made, and congratulations to everybody involved. Really, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very kind. Thank you.
I think Councillor Khan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Exactly like Shelley and I'm sure others, the initiative taken I mean, I think it has touched every single elements of our lives and the people who are working their lives. So well done, excellent jobs. And most importantly, what it's covered is kind of mental health issues and bringing people together, and also sort of kind of dispute management. So these are some of the things that to create a positive environment for working are so important and excellent. Well done. Looking forward. Yeah.
I think it's important now for us to maintain that momentum, continually listen to our staff and get those pulse checks. We have committed to, again, touching base with our staff with getting that formal feedback. I think that is important to keep our thought process and our journey constantly live and constantly fresh to respond to the feedback that we're getting. I think is really important.
Great job.
Okay, good. Thank you. So the next agenda item is just for information of our next committee meeting, which is the 10th of December at 10:30 a.m. More than likely via Zoom, but I guess to be confirmed. And I think at this point we stop the live, or do we do agenda item 13 and then stop recording?
No, Chair, so if you can exclude the press and public, then we'll stop the live feed.
Okay, so let me just get the spiel up. Exclusion of press and public for the next agenda item. So the resolution is that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contain exempt information pursuant to Schedule 12A, Part 1, Paragraph 1 and 3 of the Local Government Act of 1972, and that in accordance with Schedule 12A, Part 2, Paragraph 10 of the Local Government Act of 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So do you agree to that?
I'll stop the recording now.